Charge. The activities of anti-cult organizations represent a new, dangerous form of terrorism. Therefore, the international network of the anti-cult movement must be recognized by the global community as a network of terrorist organizations. The UN resolution of June 22, 2023, clearly established this by providing a comprehensive definition of terrorism. Terrorism are activities aimed at the denial of human rights, fundamental freedoms and democracy, and actions impeding the enjoyment of political, civil, economic, social and cultural rights, including the right to life, liberty, and security. In other words, these are actions or practices that directly or indirectly undermine or violate fundamental human rights and freedoms and the principles of democracy. How to defend your rights and freedoms. The public must be informed about the potential dangers of informational terrorism and possess the necessary knowledge to recognize it in the daily flow of news and information from social media and other media platforms. Right now, every citizen who is aware of the signs of informational terrorism can take active steps to prevent it. Suppose you discover instances of informational terrorism in the media in your country. In that case, you have the right and duty to contact the Attorney General and demand an appropriate investigation and measures to stop the activities of the group committing that. Competent authorities must promptly take measures to establish the fact of a terrorist act in the public domain or refute it with appropriate evidence. In accordance with the principles of the rule of law and democracy, the Attorney General must publicly report on the work done within a set time frame. Suppose the fact of an informational terrorist act is confirmed. In that case, people should be informed about its goals, objectives, and the extent of the harm caused to reduce the negative consequences of the attack. Since informational terrorist acts are conducted in the public sphere, the quicker society reacts to them, and the faster competent authorities take measures to neutralize them and hold those responsible accountable, the less harm these terrorist acts will cause to the entire society. Conversely, suppose an informational terrorist act occurs, and the public and law enforcement agencies ignore it. In that case, the terrorist act achieves its goals, and the destructive consequences for both citizens and the entire country are amplified significantly. Therefore, society must monitor the integrity of the information field and promptly report any informational terrorist acts discovered in the media, and the relevant authorities must respond swiftly to citizens' reports. If, after citizens request an investigation into an informational terrorist act, the Attorney General does not provide a public report on the work done, does not disclose the investigation results, and does not take measures to stop the activities of those committing informational terrorism within the legally established time frame, this should raise justified doubts about their competence. The lack of active measures from the Attorney General could be seen as possible complicity in criminal activities or deliberate aiding of the perpetrators. In such a case, citizens have the legal right to initiate the procedure for removing the Attorney General from office for actions that contradict the interests of the people and the state. Moreover, if the Attorney General, in their position, allows informational terrorist acts to be committed and lets the perpetrators go unpunished, then they themselves should be held accountable under the law for aiding terrorism and participating in the activities of a terrorist network. The presence of an individual in a significant governmental role who supports terrorism poses a serious threat to national security and the stability of the law enforcement system. Therefore, if the Attorney General fails to fulfill their duties to protect the rights and freedoms of the people, any citizen has the right to appeal to the higher authorities responsible for appointing the Attorney General in your country, requesting that they be peacefully and lawfully removed from office. As citizens, you must also understand your own responsibility. If you witness any form of terrorism and choose to remain silent, you similarly become an accomplice to the crime. Silence in such circumstances can be regarded as a form of criminal inaction. If you witness an attack on your rights and freedoms, an attack on democracy, do not remain silent. Inform the competent authorities. After all, the consequences of such a terrorist act will affect you first and foremost. In light of recent events, which have made it clear how much impact information can have on the world, covering up informational terrorism is equivalent to depriving yourself and your children of a future. Therefore, if you encounter informational terrorist acts in the media in your country, report them and demand that the activities of these informational terrorists be stopped. Protect your rights and ensure a safe future for yourself and your children.
In a democratic world, anti-cult organizations should not exist at all, as their very essence contradicts democracy and the pluralism of views on which a free and equal democratic society is built. Nevertheless, this criminal international terrorist group not only exists, but also openly engages in inhumane activities in full view of the global community, posing a real danger to society. You might ask, why haven't anti-cult organizations been held accountable for their actions? And why do they still exist? Because for many years, this transnational terrorist group operated in the shadows, using sophisticated manipulation techniques to conduct informational terrorist acts. It took 30 years of observing their activities and a 10-year investigation to uncover their tools and methods, and to establish their true goals. The presented facts clearly show that anti-cult movements are tools of the enemy of the entire free world for conducting covert terrorist acts in the informational space. This means they consciously aid the enemy's global plan for total power domination. In this context, anti-cult organizations are just one branch of a network of similar organizations that use the same methods, all led by a hidden shadow force, their ideological mastermind. All members of this network are the architects of a new world disorder. Their goal is the destabilization of society on all fronts: political, social, cultural, ideological, religious, and others. Therefore, destructors like anti-cultists are present in many areas of public activity and occupy various levels of the social hierarchy. They do not care whom they target or for what reason. The main objective is to persecute the innocent, which allows them to create informational terrorist acts to influence the masses. They are indifferent to who holds power. They will undermine any authority. The ultimate goal of their activities is globally orchestrated mass disorder, civil war, and the complete collapse of democracy. Each of them plays their part in the unified enemy scheme to destroy democracy and establish totalitarianism. Therefore, they draw into their network all those as deceitful and unscrupulous as themselves who can help achieve their goals. They strive to extend their influence worldwide. In some countries, they have already infiltrated the government. In others, they openly influence legislation. In some places, they even receive funding from the state. There is also a country that serves as the source of this harmful influence spreading across the globe. In this country, this shadow force already controls the government and is the real power. Through their actions, this entire international terrorist group is bringing about a new world order led by the hidden enemy, the enemy that is currently reviving the legacy of Nazism in a new, even more insidious form. For convenience and understanding, let's call this new form of Nazism global anti-cultism, after that branch of the unified network, on the example of which it became possible to study the methods and schemes of the hidden enemy through years of investigation, monitoring, and study of its activities. Humanity is facing a threat of this kind for the first time, because right now there is a war, and it is a covert, undeclared war that has engulfed all of humanity.
Chapter 3. Anti-occultism as a new form of Nazism.
I don't make the claim lightly that the enemy is reviving Nazism in a new form, nor do I casually compare the methods of the Nazis and anti-cultists. The fact is that for your enemy, Nazism is a very close concept. The Third Reich is where modern anti-cult fighters find their roots. To understand the entire chain of events, it is essential to know that Hitler in particular, and Nazism in general, heavily relied on the Protestant Church and the anti-cult movements of that time.
Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, was known for his radical views. He actively fought against other Christian denominations and religious movements, demanding the death penalty for citizens who understood faith in Christ differently than he did. Moreover, Martin Luther was a fervent anti-Semite. He declared that Jews were a misfortune for the German people, advocated burning their synagogues and schools in the name of the Lord and Christianity, and stated that if he were to baptize a Jew, he would lead him to a bridge, tie a stone around his neck, and push him into the water. These radical views of Martin Luther, which became the foundation of Protestantism, later played a role in the growth and spread of Nazism. Hitler admired Luther and called him the greatest German genius, and Protestant ministers, in turn, began to support Hitler's ideas. German Protestant pastors infected with anti-cultism on the territory of Germany are largely responsible for the spread of Nazism among the German believers. The rise and development of Hitler's ideology was based, among other things, on the Protestant and Catholic religions. Later, atheists were even banned from joining the SS. Thus, a supporter of Hitler was typically a devout Protestant or Catholic. By 1932, Hitler's party, the NSDAP, received 60% of the vote among Protestant pastors. Support ranged from 90 to 100% in small Protestant communities, especially in Bavaria. Historians assert that the Third Reich began in Bavaria as early as 1932. As early as in 1921, in the Protestant Church, the Apologetic Center was established, a prototype of modern anti-cult organizations. Officially, the Apologetic Center was supposed to monitor the activities of other religious movements and inform the Protestant church community about them. In reality, the Apologetic Center began collecting data on various cults, movements, circles, and other associations. In 1932, Pastor Walter Kunneth, an anti-Semite from Bavaria and the chief editor of the Protestant publication Word and Deed, became the head of the Apologetic Center. This marked the beginning of a campaign against non-Christian movements such as anthroposophy, Darwinism, Monism, spiritualism, and occultism. Movements that the Protestant Church viewed as competition. Lectures and articles were produced on this topic, with many ideas and methods inheriting an inquisitorial approach. On April 26, 1933, Walter Kunneth presented a report titled "The Church and the Jewish Question" to the Federal Church Administration in Berlin. In it, he called for the swift eradication of Judaism, which he described as a foreign entity within the body of Germany. This report had a profound influence on the final adoption of anti-Semitic policies.